Ladies and gents, welcome back to another Engineers podcast. Today I'm joined by Simon Henriksson, who is co-founder and CTO of an AI startup called Kin. It's fascinating what the AI world is bringing us, and this is a platform that is a personal coach that grows with you. And we're going to get into a number of different products and features that Kin actually offer. Smart memory being one of my favorites here, which I'm going to give Simon the pleasure of talking to us a little bit about. We're going to break down some of those engineering challenges as well and how they've actually built the product. Simon, big thanks for coming to talk to us. You're a bit of a serial entrepreneur as well. I want to ask you a little bit about your background and who you are and where you come from. So I'm going to give the mic to you and you can kick us off.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.
Pleasure.
Yeah, where did it all start? I've been in both in software engineering and in entrepreneurship all my life. I think as with many other like myself, we started tinkering with websites and selling websites instead of walking with newspapers back in primary school. And then things just rolled on from there. Started several different companies in the event management and the travel industry, in the email industry. I spent the last 10 years in travel, building like highly scalable systems, handling thousands of requests per second, thousands of integrations to different systems. It's a crazy industry, and I was happy that it was more or less coming to an end because we decided that it was time to sell the company, and then COVID hit, and 3 months later we were talking about declaring bankruptcy. That was a pretty wild period of my life. But it definitely also made me reflect a little bit on what I wanted to do with my life. And I decided it was time to try something new. And that is what became Kin. So I think what it grew from was that one thing that I realized that I was missing over all those years of my kind of professional journey was that I didn't really have anyone to share those experiences with or to help me like carry all the lessons that I learned forward from one opportunity, one company to the next. And of course you have family and you have girlfriends and so on that you can talk with, but they also get tired of listening to you talking about work, right? um, and so there wasn't really anyone who kind of followed me through my life and career and helped me, remind me of different lessons learned and so on, until 2 years ago, where I started using like a personal coach who filled this gap for me. And it's been quite a kind of a profound impact on both my professional life but also my personal life, and managing to balance this and to understand myself and so on. So that was something that was really intriguing to me, kind of discovering that this is a thing that some people have access to, and a lot of people don't. And then at the same time, we were just it's an amazing time to be an engineer and a product builder, because we have all these advancements in AIs with the LLMs that also started kind of a few years ago. And I've never really been into machine learning that much before in my career, but now suddenly there was another tool in the toolbox that was of a totally new type, new kind that I hadn't tried before. That was really interesting to discover, and just the level of language understanding that we now have with these models that kind of allow us to truly understand what the users are actually saying, the meaning behind their words, and then actually communicate to them in a human-like fashion. Um, that's amazing.
Yeah, I think you touched on something, literally the first thing that you said, software and entrepreneurship. Really nice intersection, great blend. And we were speaking offline before we kicked off. Sorry to hear what happened with the travel company. An awful situation, really, for so many different people for obvious reasons. But it'd be good to understand a little bit more about Kin being founded. And you touched on something that was quite interesting. You never had someone to share these personal experiences with, both highs and lows, because Kin's purpose, and we'll get into that, is really about a coach, an AI coach that grows with you. Do you think Kin being born was something that you wanted because it was your own personal journey, or you thought the industry and people needed, if you like?
I think it was like, honestly, maybe a little bit of both, because it was not, when we started exploring a few years ago, it was not the first, what we could build with AI and all this stuff. It was not kind of the first thing that came to mind. So it was not like, let me quit, the travel industry and go work on a personal coach. In the beginning, we were exploring a lot around what's also like a deep interest to us in kind of taking ownership of your personal data online. Why does all my data live in different databases that I don't control, and so on? And how can we saw some tendencies as well in like new standards on the internet that was trying to change this around a little bit. And so we were exploring a lot, what can we do with like personal data, and how can we combine it, with AI in a way that unlocks new possibilities. And then we realized that it's this kind of personal coach role that follows you, that grows with you over time, that is extremely powerful to have. And we I had experienced it a little bit at that point. Some of my co-founders also had the pleasure of that, and we all agreed like, this experience needs to be brought out to the masses. And it's actually now possible, because we know how to take care of that very trusted, or let's say like very valuable data in a good way, because that's what we had been researching. And we can actually, with the LLMs and the advancements in NLP, we can actually create this like digital personal coach. And it can actually be good enough that you want to use it instead of using a real one, or use it if you can't access a real one.
Good.
Yeah.
No, amazing. I do want to touch on LLMs, NLP, and some of the engineering challenges, because that's what we do here. Talk to us a little bit about 3 points. The 3 points being smart memory, soft data, local first trend. Tell us what they are and what they're doing for your product.
Yeah. So those are kind of some of the product and technical, pillars or cores of our product. In order to build any type of, let's say, personal AI that grows with you over time, what we see Kin as is this combination of a coach and a friend, maybe a mentor. It's a new kind of relationship that we are not used to. It's a relationship with an AI. But what we're trying to do is kind of bring these three roles into one. And like, imagine that what you talked with your friend about, your coach also knew, and what you talk with your therapist about, your coach also knew, and so on. So the goal with the smart memory is to be able to analyze what the user is telling us and extract structured information that kind of maps out your life. And we break it down into two major components, a little bit inspired about from how the human brain works. So we have kind of semantic memory and episodic memory. So the semantic memory is a lot about facts and relationships. So if you talk about your boss or your coworkers, you talk about that you love going to the park and your favorite color is green and all these kind of things, facts about your life that we try to extract, and we represent it as kind of a graph, as a knowledge graph of nodes and entities. And then we have the episodic side, which is much more about events and episodes that happened in your life. So that might be you describing, going to the park last weekend with your girlfriend and your dog, and the dog was jumping in the fountain and having fun. That's a specific event that happened at a certain time in your life, and we try to condense that and say, okay, so we have identified here there's an event. Who is involved in that event that links over to the semantic memory? There's your girlfriend and your dog. And when did it happen? Not when did you tell us about it, because of course we know that, but also, on a timeline of your life, when does this happen? So we try to place it on a timeline of your life. And now we have this semantic knowledge as a graph, and this episodic knowledge as a timeline of events that link together. And with that, we can create a scalable system for understanding the user over time. And when you come in again and then you want to interact and you maybe mention your girlfriend, we can see that you went to the park with your girlfriend, for example. So we're able to we invest a lot in the kind of memory ingestion side of things to make a much more precise and accurate retrieval compared to the more naive retrieval augmented generation approaches that just chunk up the messages from the chat and throw it in a vector store, and then you try to retrieve some messages out and put it in the LLM as a context, and you hope that it will figure out what to say. The problem is that it really doesn't scale, and when you talk 400 times about your girlfriend, then it's having a really hard time to figure out what is actually relevant about your girlfriend in this specific context of a conversation or whatever interaction it might be.
Interesting. I've got this quite vivid imagination in my mind of under the hood what the platform's doing with the timeline, with the knowledge graph. Where are some of your engineering challenges inside of that? You touched on a couple, but what's really tricky building your platform?
On the memory side of things, it's very, very tricky to get things right. So we have a machine learning team of 3 amazing persons working on this for a long time, breaking down this whole kind of pipeline into several subcomponents that are very good at what they do. Because LLMs are great, but they're also unreliable in many ways and random. And we want to be able to use the greatness of the LLMs in their prediction and their the feature of the hallucination, so to say, to analyze things. But we also want to have a somewhat predictable system that we can actually measure works. And it's that part is super tricky, but it's also super tricky to try and analyze the language, basically, because If I say to you, I'm gonna get my bike fixed soon, versus we're thinking about having a baby soon. You say soon in both sentences, but you probably mean very different soon. Especially here in Copenhagen, having my bike fixed soon, that's like within the next 2 days. Having a baby soon, that's maybe I don't know, within a year, right? So you have to look a lot at the context and be clever about how you try to extract the structured underlying information.
Interesting. Tell us then more about the other two pillars that are existing in your business: soft data, local first trend. Why do they exist within those pillars, if you like, to really uphold the platform, and what are their benefits?
Yes. So soft data, soft data is maybe defined best by looking at what is the opposite, hard data. So hard data is all these data trails that you leave around the internet. Your email, your bank account statements, all the stuff that you can get, through different APIs from different services and so on and so forth, your calendar and so on, which definitely tells something about who you are, but it's in many ways derived data from the actual, thoughts and actions that you take. Whereas soft data is your thoughts, your understanding of the world, how you see it, all the things that are going on inside of your brain, and not kind of derived things. So we focus a lot on extracting this, like asking you about, what do you think about this kind of thing? What do you think about that? What should you have done in this scenario? To try to understand the kind of essence of you in a way. And that is kind of the primary data for kin. And then we can enrich it with, this hard data or these other data sources. Because let's take an example, like we can take your bank transactions. Yeah, we don't do that, but let's say we did, and we can see that you're spending money on takeaway. Okay, what are we going to do with that information? Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? Well, if you told us that you're trying to get, fit and lean, then it's probably a bad thing. Or if you told us that you're trying to save money, it might be a bad thing that you're spending a lot of money on that. But without understanding kind of you as a person, you don't have the context to understand kind of the rest of the world. So that's why we have this focus on soft data, at least in the beginning. And then we have the local first, which is a new, it's not a new thing at all. Like local first just means that you're building applications that are supposed to run on your device instead of in the cloud. That's what all application used to be, right? You back in the days, you put in a CD-ROM and you install it, and then everything is happening on a computer. All the data is there, all the business logic. But we have seen over the years that all of this has kind of moved to the cloud. Many benefits there, but now we're starting to see kind of maybe a reaction against that, because while there's a lot of benefits with using the cloud, there's also a lot of downsides. Why the reason that we're using local first is that we can, like, the benefits for us is a lot. Like having the data right there on the device makes it super snappy, right? We can build a really good user experience for you because like we don't need to go to APIs, we don't need to make network requests and so on and so forth. It also simplifies the development because we don't need to build APIs. We don't need to manage like failed network requests. We don't need to build like a local caching data layer, all this stuff, right? You're just reading and writing directly from the database. Makes it super simple. And another great thing is of course, since all the data is on your device, it's also protected by kind of um, the nature of it being local and not living in a database where we have all the user data in like a big cloud, data honeypot that might get, that is like a real interesting target. If we had all the user data that we have and all the private information that people are telling kin, if that actually lived in a cloud database, that would be, a very interesting target to hack. But because it's all distributed on the devices, we don't even have a database in the cloud. So all the data is on the user's devices, all their personal data, and that is just like from a trust and from a privacy perspective, obviously, so much better.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, to have
I was actually going to ask, like, what was the decision behind that? Was it for security and privacy reasons that drives that to build the product in that way? I imagine so, but it'd be really good to get in the mind of
yes. So it definitely was the first thing. I was like, how can we make sure that we build a trustworthy like AI experience? Like no one is gonna actually use this product if they don't trust it. And how to build trust? You build trust in many different ways. You can build trust through UI, through the way that you interact, through your communication. But it also comes down to, how are you handling the data that the user gives you? And that's where we decided to kind of take on the additional challenge of doing this local first, because we believe it's the only right way to do it. Like the user needs to be in full control and own their data and not be worried like where their data is, going, who has a copy of my data, all this stuff. If we can take that worry away, or at least decrease it as much as possible, that just brings more trust and more chance of people, using this product as it's intended to be used.
Yeah, 100%. Are there more engineering challenges that come with it, building local first?
There are several challenges for sure. So many of the tools that you're used to using, like you don't have anymore. Like you don't have, AWS Aurora database that you can just spin up in the cloud, or the most like popular vector database that you can just go to, because now you have to find alternatives that actually run on the device, right? And so that means often your alternatives are very limited. Often you might need to build some native stuff yourself, and it's definitely that's definitely a challenge. Like the tooling side of things. But we are lucky to work with. I have an amazing team that are very experienced in this, and working also with some partners on both the database side and so on that are doing really amazing things in the local first area. I think one thing that is really important to highlight is that we also understood, or at least, if we're trying to predict the future a little bit, we're seeing all these amazing machine learning inference chips coming out on our different devices, right? Like Apple's neural engine just being updated every half year, like twice as powerful, 4 times powerful. It's just like escalating, and it's the same on Android and all the other devices. And these NPUs are just getting crazy performant. And at the same time, we're seeing machine learning models that are becoming smaller and smaller and better at the same time. So it's just obvious that the future lies in being able to take advantage of the edge machine learning NPUs that are on our phones and on our devices. And if we want to take advantage of those, if you want to do edge machine learning, you need to have your data right there next to the chip, right? So that forces you to actually go this way. and it's been a kind of a big upfront investment to go down this route, but we see it already paying off. We are, doing. We have an embedding model that runs locally and can do embeddings in milliseconds, much faster than going to some cloud provider and waiting for a network round trip and so on and so forth. So that means we can build an app experience that is, first of all, like super snappy. We can do searches in our vector database without hitting the cloud. Like, it enables a much better experience both for us as developers but also for the users. And that's only gonna like escalate as we see more and more powerful chips and be able to run more different models on the device.
Amazing. A new world for you as well. LLMs, NLP. What's been your biggest learning stepping into that world?
Oh, that's a good question. I think one of the very interesting, both challenges and learnings have been how to get a kind of solid development engineering cycle going around working with LLMs. Because especially, it's getting better now, especially 2 years ago, it was very much like, okay, here's the LLM, set an experiment with some prompts, see if it works. Okay, cross your fingers, put it in, and then you have a new use case. Like, okay, let's change the prompt, see if everything is still working, and so on. And the tools to actually kind of learn and improve, like in a continuous cycle, just haven't been there. And now we're seeing kind of a lot of new super cool tools that are coming a little bit from the ML ops world and some from the software engineering side, and it's kind of blending together. And we're starting to understand how you can actually work in a structured fashion on improving your agents, for example, right? Like, we had to build our own kind of agent framework that breaks down the different tasks into separate, like, small steps that we can test and that we can iterate on, because having these like huge agents that just can do everything at once makes it incredibly difficult to test and to change and to update and so on. So I think it's been really challenging coming from kind of a software engineering side where everything is so settled and so like the processes are more or less the same for the last many years, into this new world where we're dealing with this new beast that is not deterministic, that is just how do we control this random beast, right? And actually bring kind of engineering excellence into working with that.
I love that answer, actually. It's more around like the structure in the process, and we're evolving now. We're creating the right tooling from both sides, from MLOps side, engineering side, to actually facilitate this and create value in the process. So I love that. That's coherent enough for me to understand as well. I love what you're building, even exploring this today in these close to 30 minutes offline. I'm loving what you're building. Tell us about where you think the business can and will go in the next 12 months.
Yeah, so I think we just launched in the App Store 3-4 weeks ago, and it's super interesting to see and understand how people are interacting. Like, obviously, like, we can't see what people are writing, right, because we don't have the data, but we do ask some people to kind of contribute. We do a lot of user interviews and so on, and it's been super interesting to understand all the different use cases that comes from having this agent that kind of understands you and that has this memory that actually works. I think there's a huge opportunity if we manage to actually tell people what you can do with Ken. because that is maybe one of the biggest challenges, is because we're not used to this relationship, and um, we're not used to having these clues like when should I use kin. Like for example, I use it often if I'm frustrated about how a meeting went. Maybe I didn't get to say the things that I wanted to say, and I can use kin afterwards to kind of let off some steam and reflect on what happened, why didn't I get to say the things that I wanted to, and so on. But finding those triggers during your everyday where you can actually pull kin up and and use it and get value from it, and that's what we're trying to do, because there's so many of them. But it's a new habit, and we're trying to figure out how do we explain and reinforce that habit to show the value to the users, because I'm 100% certain that if we can do that and people understand kind of the value that you can get, especially also like today, but also over time, if you keep using it, then it's going to be a no-brainer to have this kind of AI relationship as part of your life.
Yeah, it's multifaceted in the sense of you can use it as a coach to grow you. You can use it as a journal. You can use it in many different ways, or that's where my brain's going. You hit the nail on the head. Like, how do we help people understand those triggers? I'm a Duolingo user. I use it in the morning because that's just my trigger. But once you find that point where you're able to interact with your users, hopefully you can then start to really scale.
Yes, and that's what we're really trying to nail now. We're working on a new onboarding experience that's gonna hopefully tell the story better. Like on the technical roadmap, there's a lot of interesting things. I mean, one of the challenges with local first, for example, that we just discussed, is that since all your data is on a device, on one device, bringing multiple devices into the game is suddenly a challenge, right? Which is not what we're used to from the cloud. So you have to find a way to synchronize data across multiple devices, and how do we do that in a good way with end-to-end encryption, making sure that the data stays private and so on. So many interesting challenges there that we're working on. We're also working on a totally a conversation mode, right? So being able to talk to kin. So right now we have something that is kind of halfway there. You can in the chat get it to speak up the messages, and you can transcribe, and you can have a kind of decent conversation. But it's not hands-free. It's not what we have seen from OpenAI and some of the competitors over the past 3 to 6 months. And we're also working on figuring out how do we enable that experience, because voice is just a natural interface, and of course you want to have natural conversations in voice with kin.
All right. Well, I'm loving what you're building. Straight after
Thanks a
this,
lot.
I'm going to be asking how I can be an early user, how I can get access. But we will be checking in,
Yeah,
periodically.
that's super easy actually. You just go to the App Store and you search for Kin AI, and it's right there.
Go to the App Store, search for Kin AI, download the guys and girls, and go and check it out for yourself. So I'm going to want to say a massive thanks for coming to join us, telling us a little bit about your background, but now what you're building at Kin and some of the lessons that you've learned along the way. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, I hope people will go check it out. And also maybe just a shameful plug: we are looking for amazing engineers. So if you are sitting and finding any of these interesting, like these technologies that we're working with interesting, if you have experience, building agents and so on, please reach out and let's have a chat.
Good. That's not a shameful plug at all. You can obviously see from Simon's LinkedIn profile and some of the career sites that he's been involved in the founding and entrepreneurship space for some time and built some incredible businesses. So do go and check out Simon. Do go and check out Kin and see what they're up to. And for everyone listening, likes, shares, subscribes, all of that fun stuff makes this little ecosystem go ticking round. So a big thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Hey guys, thanks for watching this episode. Massively appreciate you listening and checking in with us. If you want to find out more about us and what we're doing, please check us out on social media. What we're trying to do at Enginears is build a community to drive knowledge sharing and experiences. On Twitter, we can be found Enginears.io. It's no_. We've also got a website, which is engineers.io. These links will all be posted in the description. Any feedback and comments are massively appreciated. We're always looking to improve on where we can. Thanks, guys.